Everybody, it's Greene. It is Thursday. Today is Thursday, November 19th, and it's noon on a Thursday, which means that this is the Greenhouse Effect. So, it's another crazy week in a crazy town. Welcome, everybody. Welcome any new folks that we have coming on board, and welcome to the people who stay with me through thick and thin. Again, this is Hayden Greene. I am your host of the Greenhouse Effect, and it is Thursday, and we are going to talk about a lot of stuff today. You know, it's so funny because, like, every week I sit down and I go, all right, what am I going to talk about this week? What am I going to deal with this week? And um, it's either Hector or Dunn yelling at me, or said giving me some good pieces of information, or and I'm trying to figure these things out, and every week I'm like, oh wow, it's like this is actually might be a slow news week, and then I start writing, and it's like four topics in. Um, I say all of that to say that this is the world that we live in is just chock full of all kinds of things happening around us and not happening around us, and or happening not around us. In other words, in far reaches of the world. And so, if you ever think that things are slowing down or things are not happening, just know that other people's experiences are quite different than yours. And if you delve into it a little bit, you'll find that there's so many things happening in this world that need our attention. So let's get into it. Where do I want to start? All right. I'm going to start with the silly first, and then we'll get into the deep stuff a little bit later. Hello to everybody who's just now joining. So the NBA draft was last night. For those of you who are in the United States, the annual cattle call of young men going into the NBA to try to get fame and fortune and set their families up for the rest of their lives. It happened yesterday. And I'm from New York, so we are maligned. Let's go with that. We're pretty much maligned when it comes to Knicks fandom. Our team has not been great for quite some time. And so last night, we picked eighth, I think. We picked eighth. I didn't even watch the draft, for those of you who are wondering. Last night draft wasn't one of those where it's like, oh, there's some outstanding talent out there. I've got to see who gets who. It's not like it was the Zion sweepstakes from a couple of years ago. This was, as far as I could tell, a pretty ordinary draft. There's some good talent in there, but no standout, no transformational stars. So we picked up Obi Toppin, Obi Toppin, and from what I hear, he's a good candidate. He's a good person. But Stephen A. lost his mind. Obi is a New York guy coming back to play in New York, so that's always great, right, Carmelo? Oops. Anyway, so that always seems to be good, but Stephen A. lost his mind because apparently we need a guard in New York. I got news for you, Stephen. We need a guard. We need a point guard. We need a shooting guard. We need a forward. We need a small forward. We need a center. We need a swing player. You get my drift? Okay. It's everybody. Need a whole new team. Brand new team. That's what the Knicks need. Also, I hold dual citizenship because I live in the People's Republic of Brooklyn, and therefore I also root for the Nets, who have taken up lodging in Brooklyn. And this is what I said to somebody a long time ago. You know, normally I am against those people who are like, oh, you know, you can't have two teams, you can't root for two teams. I'm a Knicks fan, but they put a team in my borough, and they called it the Brooklyn. It's not the New York Nets, you know, it's the Brooklyn Nets, and so I have to root for the Nets. And this year we've got Kyrie and KD, and they're looking at trying to get James Harden. And I keep on saying this all the time. I was like, everybody realizes that there's only one ball, right? So I don't know how all these people are going to coexist, but I don't get paid the big dollars to make those decisions. So, I'm hopeful that the NBA season will be interesting. It is starting like 7 days after the last one ended. It's like we just have a championship 5 minutes ago, and so hopefully these players are rested. There's some people who didn't even make the bubble to go down to Disney, and those players will be completely rested. And then there's some players who were playing right up until, what was it, the beginning of October or the middle of October. It's a little bananas when you really think about it. So my prediction is, and I hope that I am wrong, is that there will be a brash of injuries. A lot of people not taking the time to condition, a lot of people not taking the time to heal. And so when it comes time for them to get on the court, you're going to see people who are ill prepared to be on the court. So my prediction again is that a lot of teams are going to see a lot of injuries. A lot of the stars that you're going to be interested in seeing will probably not make it through all of the season. They're only playing 75 games, which is what, 6 less. Then I don't even know why they cut it down. Like, if you're going to cut it down by 6, what's the point? Um, so, or 7 or something like that. So I think that there are a lot of people who are not going to see the full season because the injuries are going to get them. It's an injury bug, right? So because people don't have the time to condition, and that's just what you see. You saw it you see it in the NFL right now. There was no preseason. There was no training camp, and so everybody, you're seeing a lot of people who are normally pretty durable going down because you didn't have the time to condition your body, and you didn't have the time to really ramp up to playing speed, which is what the preseason does. Even if most starters only play like a game, all told, right? Most starters only play one game. It's really helpful to bring your body up to speed. But we'll see. Like I said, I'm hopefully wrong. I don't want to see anybody get injured, but it is what it is. Okay. Comment section is quiet today, so I'm talking to myself, which is fine. I am accustomed to talking to myself. I live in a house with 3 women. Nobody listens to me. Anyway, next thing, the world's most sexiest man was announced today, and it is Michael B. Jordan. Killmonger. I have no problems with this. He has long since been somebody who everybody has said he is the pinnacle and yada, yada, yada. And I'm fine with that. I always have a question about this whole world's most sexiest man alive kind of thing. Like, what's the rubric? See, I'm an educator, right? So, and when you tell me that there is a most, you are telling me that there was a way that you used to measure this thing called the most, right? And so my question is always like, well, what did you use as a rubric? Is there a symmetrical face that you are looking for? Is it the way that he carries himself? Is it the like what are you using to measure the world's most sexiest man? That's number one. Number two, how come that person changes every single year? Do they get less sexy? So it's like the MVP award. There used to be a conversation about in the NBA that they could give the MVP award to Michael Jordan every single year because that's who he was. He was the best player, and he should have gotten the MVP every single year. It's the same argument that they use currently for LeBron, saying that you take LeBron off of any of the teams that he's on, and they don't make it to the finals in the same fashion as if they had LeBron on the team. So how is this different for the world's sexiest man? Or like how is this so you get it once and you can never get it again? I don't understand the whole point of the world's sexiest man. And the other question, the last question is like where where what is the who's the world's sexiest woman? Why who like I how come there's not a gender equivalent to that, right? And I I know that calling having a contest for the world's sexiest woman immediately runs into the realm of sexism and misogyny that we've gone into for that we've lived through for all of the generations of the world, not just this country. So I get that, but if that's the case, why does it exist for one gender and not for another gender? And we look forward to this. It's like, oh, who's gonna be the world's most sexiest man today or this year? And I'm like, okay, so like who won? At one point in time, it was Blake Shelton was the world's sexiest man. Must have been a slow year, right? So like in that year, you mean to tell me that Michael B. Jordan was not sexier than Blake Shelton? Like, okay, I don't, I don't know. It's a dumb. So I say all of this to say that this is a dumb thing that people does. It's dumb. It's dumb. It's so dumb, and I wish they would stop it. But clearly, other people like it, so that's why it keeps on going. And to be honest with you, the only reason, you know what the rubric is that they use to judge who the world's sexiest man is? Who has the better publicist? Whose publicist is knocking on people's doors and is like, hey, listen, you got to get my guy in there, man. You got to throw him a bone. The guy is trying to be a sex symbol, and you can't be a sex symbol unless you have this title like world's sexiest man. So like you got to do what's it going to take for you to acknowledge my guy as the world's sexiest man? That's all it is. That's all it is. It is arbitrary, capricious, and for the most part, completely unfounded. So anyway, I just think that it's a funny thing that happens every single year. Okay. In New York City, there is a tradition of getting a tree for the Rockefeller Center, and then this tree shows up. It is planted in the center of Rockefeller Center, and it is decorated, and people come from miles around just to see what this tree looks like, all decorated. And so we are it is one of those things where it's a Christmas tradition. And so this year's Rockefeller tree came from some random place. It was in somebody's front yard, which is weird to me. We've had this tree for generations, and then all of a sudden, somebody from the Rockefeller Center says, "Hey, can we have your tree?" And the person goes, "Yeah, how much you gonna pay me?" Right? So that's always the crux, right? Like, how much you gonna pay me for this tree? So anyway, so they go get the tree, and it looks like it's a beautiful tree when it got started, but they cut the tree down and they bring it to Rockefeller Center, and it looks like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. Like it's limping on one side, it's got like branches missing on the other side, and I'm pretty sure that once they put the lights on it and they spruce it up and they trim this part and push this part back and fluff that part out, it's gonna look gorgeous. But sitting up there, it looks crazy. And I don't understand. I don't understand what happened. First of all, I don't understand what happened. I think, 2020 got it, right? So, like, it was one of those things where it's a product of what was happening in 2020. It's like, oh, okay, well, we got a crappy year, so we're going to have a crappy tree. So maybe that's what it is. But the tree looks weird, and I'm waiting to see, like I said, when they have it all decorated. But like for right now, it looks quite odd, right? But that's not what I want to talk about when it comes to this tree. The tree had a resident. The tree had a resident. The tree had an owl living in the tree. All right. So here's the question: if you found the owl when you put the tree up in Rockefeller Center, did nobody check the tree before y'all left? Like for birds' nests and for sleeping owls, and it's a baby owl. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's so cute! It's a cute baby owl." Well, here's the problem. If it's a cute baby owl, then what do babies normally have? Parents. Now the owl is orphaned. And so my question is somebody taking this owl back to where it came from? And I read something that they're taking it to a wildlife preserve or something like that so it could be released into the wild. It's a baby. Am I missing something here? Like, is the drive back too long to take it back to the place where it belongs and release it there? So maybe it has a chance to reconnect with its parents. Am I weird in that? I think that's a logical place for it to go, right? But apparently they're taking it to some other wildlife preserve, and that's weird to me. But again, it's another omen of 2020. It's like you put up a tree and there's a little scary owl staring back at you like, what you doing in my house? Wait a minute. Why is my house here? Who moved my house? Wait a minute. Where my mom? Where's my dad? Who are you? Back to the first question. What you doing in my house? Anyway, so it was a little bit weird to see them putting the tree together, and then all of a sudden there is a baby owl staring back at you. It's a weird year. Weird year. Speaking of weird things, so COVID numbers continue to go up in this country. And one of the interesting things that my wife mentioned is that the numbers are going up nationwide. There are lots and lots of people who are, deaths are continue to go up. We're up to 250,000 deaths now. People who can contract, diagnosed cases are going up all across the country. And my wife mentions is that these nationwide numbers are going up, and they're rivaling what happened in the spring, but those are numbers that are not including New York City. So what do we mean by that? New York City's numbers are low. They're going up, obviously, but New York City's numbers are low. And so if New York City's numbers are low, then you have to realize, then it's crazy, because that means that there are so many more cases everywhere else in the country, and that's scary. Because those numbers were high because New York City was the epicenter, and we had the brunt of those numbers. We had the most of those numbers. And so now they're low in New York, but the numbers nationwide are still going up, which means that places like Texas are still raging on. Places like Arizona are still raging on. And again, this is scary. I'm starting to see those images that we used to see here in New York City with the field hospitals and putting bodies in trailers, refrigerated trailers. We're starting to see those things happen in Texas and all of these other places as well. And now everybody is experiencing what we experienced. And so here's my thing, right? Like, we had this whole conversation about what New York is doing wrong, and they looked at us like, y'all are crazy, why y'all shutting down? I was like, well, now you're experiencing what we experienced, and what's your course of action, right? What are you about to do? Where are you going to take this, the treatment of this epidemic? How are you going to deal with your population? And, I'm not saying that we had all the right answers, but we got our numbers down. And, like, are you going to learn lessons from what we did, or are you just going to continue to malign the experience that New York has had and act like y'all are somewhat different? Because nobody's different. Nobody's immune, right? So because you live in a warm climate, I'm speaking about you, Texas and Arizona, doesn't mean that you're going to have a different experience. And it is now being proven that you're not having a different experience. They're having these field field hospitals and everything that we saw in New York is happening in places like Texas right now, right? So that's something that's somewhat disturbing, and I'm hoping that we get a handle on this and that we're not looking at, dare I say it, like 400,000 people. If we have a spike like we did in the spring, we're looking at about 400,000 people dying, and this is outrageous. And the testing is bananas. So, full disclosure, last week Wednesday, I took a test through my job, and on Friday it came back as positive, which means supposedly I have coronavirus. Well, here's the thing. I had a test a week before that test came back negative. Took that test, came back positive. I took a test that Saturday, and that came back negative. I took two tests, one for rapid test and then another PCR test, and all of those tests came back negative. So it was clearly a false positive. I am 100% healthy, no symptoms, and so now but just because you get a positive test, everything in your life stops, right? So I got to quarantine and got to isolate and all the rest of that stuff. But these tests are clearly showing that I do not have this thing in my system. In 3 weeks, I'll go take a antibody test to see if I ever did. But I'm pretty confident that that's going to show that I didn't. But it may show that I did. You never know. And so it's really wild because there are so many protocols for when you do get this disease, when you do contract the virus. You have to do this, you have to do that. Everybody says what you have to do, right? There is zero protocols for if that diagnosis is incorrect. There are no, okay, here is what you do if you test negative after a positive test. Here's the protocol for that. Here are the people that you need to talk to. Like, I've been shut out of my job. My kids have to stay home. We've got to do all of this stuff because of this positive test that seems to be a false positive, which is a little bit annoying. And trust me, you've heard me on here. I'm pretty much a proponent of dealing with this in a judicious way and making sure that that we're not spreading this disease anywhere. But that said, if the test seems to be erroneous, then what's the processes for that? This is the problem with dealing with a pandemic that nobody has any real answers for, because people do what they think is right, and half the time those things are not what is needed in that moment. And so it's weird. I'm going to continue to test. I'm going to take another one tomorrow. It'll probably be negative again, and that'll be confirmation that this was all a hoax. Not a hoax, sorry. An incorrect, incorrect prognosis, right? And so that's where I'm at. But it's really, really, really frustrating that there isn't some sort of a policy or some sort of procedure for when you think that these things are incorrect. So speaking of numbers and where they are, New York City is going to be shutting down its public schools again. And so we are, what are we? This is November 19th. So we're 1 week out of Thanksgiving, and then there's probably about maybe a half a month of schools. So the school, no, not even. It's probably about 3 weeks of school after that. So got about 3 weeks of school after Thanksgiving, and so the schools are going to be shut down once again. And de Blasio was on the television about a half an hour ago and spoke about the fact that they're shutting it down in order to look at the processes and get everybody tested, and then hopefully coming back, which is interesting because that's a yeoman's task. If you're going to get everybody tested and then bring everybody back, that's going to be a crazy amount of logistics. And so I'm not confident that the public schools are coming back in time for the winter portion of the fall semester. So like that last month or so. I think that they'll probably be out until January and just come back at that time. Um, Apparently, they're going to try to clean the schools all over again in the same fashion that they did in the summertime. But here's the thing: the 3%, the 3% infection rate on tests is not with the schools; it's with the city. So the entire city is at 3%, and so a lot of the schools and the parents are saying, well, why are you shutting down the schools if the schools are not that high? It's just the city is that high, and a lot of people don't understand. And here's where I have the problem: there isn't a lot of transparency. There isn't a lot of clarity on why people are doing certain things. And here's the real reason that they shut the schools down. When they opened the schools, they had to sit down and they had a negotiation with the teachers union. And the teachers union said, if there is a spike of more than 3%, even though the CDC recommends 5%, if there is a spike of more than 3%, we're going to shut down the schools. That it has to stay below 3%. It has to stay below 3% for the teachers union to be to agree to have their members go into those schools and teach those children. And so now it's over 3%. So the agreement is that they're going to shut down. So I fully expected that they were going to shut down, but then nobody's saying this to the parents. They didn't say that to the parents at the beginning. Like, hey, we're opening up, but the teachers union and the city of New York and the BOE have all agreed that if they get above 3%, that we're going to shut back down. Nobody told that to the parents. And so now we have all of these people who are, it took them by surprise, even though last week they said, hey, listen, if this goes above 3%, there's a chance that we shut down the school or that the schools opt out. But nobody responded to that, and nobody prepared them. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying nobody, but people didn't prepare themselves for the schools having to be shut down, even though people told them last week. So it's a little bit annoying that this is what is happening out in the city, but I completely understand why this is all happening, because people are not paying attention. People are just not doing the things that they needed to do. People have, as we have talked about on this show many a time, quarantine fatigue. You're tired of being inside. You're tired of not living your life the way that you're accustomed to living it. And trust me, everybody gets it. I have it. Everybody has it. But do you rather be out and about and have your freedom, or extend this epidemic even further? And the answer is clear. People are more concerned with doing what they want to do and extending this epidemic even further, and that's more important to them. There's not much more that we could do about that, right? Say about that. That's what's happening. It's not that there's a resurgence of the disease and it's a thing that isn't reliant on people's behavior. It is reliant on people's behavior, right? It is not like it blows in the wind and it's like, regardless of what you do, you're going to get it. No, it's reliant on people's behavior, and people's behavior have not been in accordance with the guidelines and the restrictions that people have been putting out. It's as simple as that. Yeah, you can argue it left, you can argue it right, but that's what's happening. So we're down. We're going to get shut down. And de Blasio said that Cuomo is about to put out another regulation that indoor dining for restaurants is going to be shut down, which is catastrophic, right? So when they had outdoor dining or were able to do outdoor dining, that gave them a little bit of a reprieve. But if they get shut down for indoor dining during the winter months, it's going to be absolutely catastrophic. There is no way that they're going to survive that. And And I completely understand why Cuomo has to do this, because he's trying to get ahead of it. He's trying to get to the point where he doesn't have to shut the entire city down again, so that there are some aspects of life that they're going to be able to do. But like for these restaurants, it's going to be catastrophic, and because now they're not going to be able to go now they're not going to be able to go and have outdoor dining because number one, it's too cold. But in addition to that, a lot of people have these outdoor dining facilities and they've completely enclosed them. And so the city has said, it's like, if you completely enclose an outdoor dining facility, guess what you just created? More indoor dining. And so if they're going to shut down indoor dining, all of those places that they closed up and spent all that money, now they can't even use those. So this place is gonna it's gonna be crazy, and it's gonna be the whole tri-state area, right? Because as you know, as I saw on a meme earlier on today, having different places that are adjoining to each other with different COVID regulations is illogical. It's kind of like having a peeing section of the pool. And that's absolutely right, because if New Jersey doesn't have the same regulations that New York does, people are just going to go back and forth. They're too close. People are just going to go back and forth to get the services that they're looking for, including going to dinner or something like that. So it's going to be crazy. And so I hope all of these things fix themselves out and fashion themselves out, and we're able to ride this wave and not have it be like the way it was in the spring for New York City, but nobody knows. Anyway, so I'm gonna shut down today, and because I got no friends here today, nobody's commenting. So we are as always here on Thursdays at noon. It's the Greenhouse Effect. I will see you again back here next week Thursday at noon. And we thank you so much for being a participant, and we love you all. Stay safe and be good.